Hi, welcome back. So for this week's code exercise, I'm going to try to keep it simple. This new library we introduced, Tone.js, that's a lot to wrap your head around. For some of you also, some of these audio concepts might be kind of new. We've spent a lot of time dealing with visuals, but not everyone has an audio background. So there's a lot to process here. So for the code exercise, all I'm going to ask you to do is just get familiar with Tone.js by making some changes to some of the examples we've developed. So you have kind of three places you can start from, and I'm going to give you some ideas of things you might want to look at. Of course, feel free to branch out from there as well if you want to. But again, for this week's exercise, you can feel comfortable doing just some small changes, just poking around Tone.js, maybe changing some of the settings of different synths, different oscillators, just playing around a little bit, but I don't necessarily expect you to take these examples very far. So let's review what we did this week. So we looked at this first example here, had to do with oscillators. We created this two detuned oscillators making this kind of drone sound. So some things that you could play with here, you could experiment with, doing mixing and matching the different waveforms, changing, the LFO that's modulating the frequency of one of the waveforms. You could change their frequency ranges. You could also, if you want to go, get a little bit more advanced, think about adding maybe a third oscillator to the mix or more, just to create kind of a thicker, more dense kind of drone sound that could be interesting. In the following example, we moved away from oscillators and we just talked about creating a synth object, which is a combination of an oscillator, but also an envelope. So it sounds more like you're playing notes on a piano. And we ended up with this little example that creates a musical scale using tonal, right? So that could be something to play with, exploring, the range of possible scales here, and just trying different musical scales. Tweaking the synth, we saw there's a bunch of different synths. If we run it here, it's using noise, right, to randomly choose notes from that scale we created. And then it's ignoring repeated notes to introduce some rests or some pauses in the melody, just to make it a little bit more interesting to listen to. So you could try, different synths. Here's another one. Here's the membrane synth, right? So totally different sounds. And these different synths have different parameters you can play with and tweak. Each of them are detailed in the Tone.js documentation. So this is a good place to start if you want to know, what kinds of values can you change inside this synth object. So tweaking the synth might be a good thing to play with. Maybe tweaking what happens in the loop function, right? So what's causing the random note selection? In the example, we tried purely random. We tried noise. Maybe there's some other idea you might have. Maybe trying, different note selection to come up with some interesting melodies here. And yeah, so those are things to play with this example. And then the last one we built, we got inspired by Memo Atkins' simple harmonic motion series, which we took a look in class. And we built this program that takes a whole series of pendulums that are tweaked to increasing frequencies, just to create polyrhythms and different phasing effects. Each pendulum is given a note coming from a scale array here, and then in this version we just shuffle the array for fun. So again, some things that you could play with here. We've also added effects in this example, so you could try a different effect here, trying to add more effect into the signal chain. You could also play with tweaking the synths, just like in the previous one. Try different sounds by changing how the synth object is created and which parameters are being set on it. And also try different, maybe different flavors of notes here. Here I was testing, I went back to a scale called the Phrygian Scale. Now, if you're curious what all the notes are all the scales that are available are, you could look at this this function here from the tonal library. There's a module called scale types, and the names function just returns a long list of all the different scales. An easy way to take a look at this is to just open up your developer tools console. Remember in P5.js, the console, first of all, I need to move it. The console, in order for it to work with your sketch, you need to select the tab here, the frame that has the name of your sketch, add glitch.me in this menu. And then you'll be able to access the variables from your sketch. For example, this is our scale, right, that we just generated here, just using the C Phrygian scale. I would not know what those notes are, but thankfully tonal.js knows. So we can say tonal.scaletype.names, and that's going to return this array here. And you see there's a whole bunch of different scale names that you can use if you want to just try different sound flavors, different note combinations. So those are all the supported names. Let's go back to something basic, like a major scale. A little bit happier. Cool. So those are things to try. You know, you don't have to shuffle the collection, for example. So the goal here with these exercises, and again, just you don't have to modify all of them. These are just a bunch of ideas for you to get started. Just submit one sketch. I just want to get you tinkering with Tone.js, trying different things, and then bring some questions in class next week so that we can, I'm sure you will have some, because all of this is very new. And then we can unpack this at our next meeting. All right, so have fun, and I'll see you next week.